Mike, I'll throw it back to you. What else did you find interesting through the first couple of days?
Well, I just counted. I went through my roster that I have, and I don't know if every single one of these are out there because I think the start of the semester is not until next week. But 135 players is what I have on my roster listed, which is what they list on their roster. I think, again, a decent number of those walk-ons can't be out there until classes start. But that's a lot of players, and there's no way around it with the house settlement coming. Large number of those players will not be here next year. The roster was going to look a whole lot different. And so I couldn't help but think practice is going to be a little bit more efficient, condensed. Like, I don't know what the right word is there. There's going to be less people on the field, I think, is the bottom line. It's going to look more NFL-like because NFL rosters for training camp are 90 players. And then during the season, it's 53 plus a 16-man practice squad. So it's a much smaller number. You're kind of, you're weeding out players that are probably more practice dummies. I say that with love and respect of walk-ons, but I mean, I think a lot of them understand that's kind of what they are. Like, they're out there just to hit people and hold blocking pads, and there's no shot in the world that they're going to see the field. And it's a romantic sort of deal for a lot of them. But it's going to be going away. The 105 player limit, all of those theoretically could be scholarship players. Partial scholarships are going to be allowed. And so I think for a school like Alabama, that's, trying to be competitive at the highest level, you're probably going to have to give scholarship money to all 105 of those. I don't know if it'll be 100%. Maybe you can kind of tier it down where you have a group of players that's earning less. Or, maybe they earn a full scholarship to be a practice squad player essentially, but then they don't get a salary, with the revenue sharing aspect of it. There's different ways to kind of skin the cat there, but at the end of the day, you're going to lose a lot of these players that are out there. And look, there's different categories of walk-ons because you have the preferred walk-ons, which a lot of those guys probably could get a scholarship offer to go play, FCS or even a group of 5 school. And some of them do. A lot of these guys transfer. Walk-ons have transferred a lot from Alabama in the last few years, and they've gone to some group of 5 schools. And I think that ultimately is going to happen where instead of going to Alabama to be a walk-on, they're going to go to those schools next year. And then you have a lot of in-state kids, a lot of, legacy kids in some cases that are, just not D1 athletes, but they love the game. They love being out there. They'll be up at 6 a.m. every day. They'll, bang their helmets together and they'll do it for free. And those guys are going to lose the opportunity too. And I think one of those is probably Aiden Moore. The younger brother of Malachi Moore, who played at Hewitt-Trussville. His only scholarship offer was from Northern Arizona, and I think the coach left, is what Malachi was telling me yesterday. And so that really wasn't going to happen. But has the opportunity to go to Alabama and play with his brother practice around his brother for a year here, or at least 5 or 6 months. That Malachi's here as a 5th-year senior. So again, it's a good story. There's kind of a romantic, feel good aspect to it. But it's going to go away. And if you're asking me about is it going to ruin college football? Is it, is the heart and soul of college football being taken away? My answer is probably no. I just don't think at the end of the day, it's going to matter. I know that people love the stories about the walk-ons getting scholarships, and it really hasn't happened in Alabama. Technically, Neeland Hibbett, the long snapper, got a scholarship. He talked about that on a podcast recently, but it hasn't happened like a true position, walk-on has gotten a scholarship really since Giles Amos. And that was 6 years ago, when he was here, the tight end, touchdown Jesus, or trailer park Jesus, whatever he was. I'm thinking of touchdown Jesus. Trailer Park Jesus. Wasn't that what they called him? Okay, you were here for Giles Amos. I was here for
rings a bell. That's to be sure. If not, that's his new nickname, and he should wear it proudly.
Yeah.
Touchdown Jesus.
But he was really. You have these stories.
Touchdown Jesus is Notre Dame, right?
Right. That's where my mind was for a second. But you have these stories like Levi Wallace, even Jamie Mosley that Kirk McNair wrote about yesterday. As an analyst at Alabama, former walk-on, younger brother of CJ Mosley. So. Again, those stories are going to go away. I personally don't think it's going to ruin college football. I just don't think they've been nice to have, but it's like it can't continue. So it's not going to continue, and that's kind of where I fall on that. But yes, Giles Amos, August 27th, 2019, explains Trailer Park Jesus.
There you go.
So Google it.
Not quite the same thing as touchdown Jesus, but
we will miss
I don't know
stories
why
like
my
that.
brain went there first.
We will miss stories like that. I do think it's going to be a big point of emphasis this coming off season for coaches to figure out, okay, what does practice look like when you do lose 20 to 30 players? Because Nick Saban was a big proponent of two spotting and being able to run essentially multiple practices at the same time and get those younger guys reps, and that adds up. So how do you do that with 105 players? You got to think there's a way. The NFL figures it out. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion with college coaches calling NFL contacts to figure out, okay, how do we do this and to continue the developmental piece of the game, which is so necessary if you want to have a good program year over year.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that really helps NFL franchises is the idea of the practice squad, right? Like you've got your main 53 guys on the roster, and then you've got another, 16 to 20 on the practice squad that you can sign to. And, is that a route that college football explores? Do you have like a practice squad or like an assembly of, I don't want to call them walk-ons, but effectively that's what they would be, to really only help out at practice, and they don't dress out on game days, and maybe they only get called up in the dire case that they need an extra body on game day. I don't know. That's just, at least, that's how the NFL does it. It would be interesting to see if college football goes down that road.
I don't know how the NCAA will define being on a roster. I think
Right.
That's going to be the most telling piece of this. I don't think they consider, there's always the stories of the guys who help the women's basketball team practice throughout the course of the season. Nobody thinks they're on a roster.
Yeah.
So you got to think there's probably a workaround there somehow if they want to try to explore it.
It's hard to police. Like you have 130 something FBS programs. Like you can't be watching film of every practice. The NCAA can't be doing that to say, this guy was out at practice wearing a helmet. I think it's probably a little bit tougher in football than basketball, just because like, you or I could probably go out there on a basketball team and just stand around and put our arms up and be a guy that, tries to block a shot. Like if we try to go out there, put pads on and try to block Jaheim Otis, we're going to get thrown on our butt. So like football is a tougher sport to just find some, slappy from, the fraternity to come in and, get hit and do some blocking drills. Like it's tough. It's a tough sport. But I will say, in terms of the NFL aspect, the thing about the NFL is you can sign players during the season. You can trade for a player. Like you can't do that in college football. You get to October, like, you have 4 cornerbacks get hurt and you need somebody to play. Like you can't go out in the free agent market and sign a cornerback because of the academic aspect of it. So that's tough. Like it's going to be different. You can't trade. You can't say, hey, Syracuse, can we trade for your starting corner? Maybe one day you will. Like I think college football, I would not be surprised if in 10, 20 years we're talking about that being a reality in college football.
Literally, the thing that was going through my head is don't tell a lawyer you can't do that because they'll sue and somehow make the transfer portal 365 days a year.
The academic element is what makes that super tricky. Like these dudes are still taking classes, right? Like how would
that's going to matter much longer into the future?
It may not, but right now it does. So it's like,
I still think the end result of college football, not to get too far off track, is like a model where it's Alabama Football LLC and it's employees of that LLC, and whether they go to class at Alabama or Texas or Eastern Carolina, it doesn't really matter. Like that academic part, I think, is going to go away, but not right now. So you still have the problem of 2025. Again, you have a string of injuries. And look, like it really hasn't happened. Like that's still an emergency situation. I mean, there hasn't been a walk-on who's really played meaningful snaps for Alabama since my time in 5 years. Like you've had a few that will warm up, before games because they're a little bit thin at a spot. But even when, like, say in 2021, they had to run in of injuries at running back. I forget who got hurt, but they were down. And so they ended up just pulling like Christian Leary from the wide receiver position. They pulled Demoy Kennedy, the inside linebacker, and they put him at running back. So you're probably doing something like that. But it's before you would even do a walk-on. Like I think you would convert a scholarship, it's not even going to be a term anymore. A recruited real player, if you will, from a different position before you would put in, Joe Smith from Vestavia Hills, who's just kind of hanging around the team as a walk-on.
No, I think that's interesting. To tie a bow on this, when you talked to Malachi about that and his brother, did he reveal anything in depth about it, or maybe just kind of skirted it a little bit?
I mean, he said it would be detrimental, to players like Aiden, and to all walk-ons that he's been around. So, it wasn't the most forceful stand, on Malachi's part, and ultimately, he's going to the NFL in 4 or 5 months here, so it's not something that's going to be of his concern next year. But for his brother, it will be. Like if you're asking me right now, like, will Aiden Moore be on Alabama's roster in 2025? I think the answer is probably no. Is he still at the University of Alabama as a student? Maybe, but I just find it hard under the new system that a player like that will be able to stay.
Yeah, it might be the University of Alabama, Birmingham.
Right. That's where a lot of these guys are going to go. Yeah.
UAB, baby.